and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Hump Day Wednesday edition of Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And we are live as always on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. Of course, it's a Wednesday. That means we get to talk with Dave Weinberg as we do each week for Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can catch all the latest over at 973 ESPN.com, the 973 ESPN mobile app. Of course, all of the comments from Doc Rivers transcribed for your consumption is over at 973 ESPN.com, the 973 ESPN mobile app. Also, we'll ask Dave Weinberg. I just posted about an hour ago. 15 Eagles are on the nominees list for the initial Pro Football Hall of Fame. So the way the Pro Football Hall of Fame works is they put out the first list, the full list of the nominees. Then they cut it down to one group in November. Then they get it down to the final 15 in January. And of course, whoever that 15 is will join former Eagles coach Dick Vermeil in the 2022 Hall of Fame class next year. So definitely a bunch of, eye-popping Eagle names on the list, and some you might have forgotten about actually as well on the list. So you can go check out the full list. I'll ask some of the names to Dave Weinberg coming up in about 25 minutes from now, what he thinks of some of those names after we talk about the Eagles game from this past Sunday. But before we get into too much Eagles stuff, as the Eagles are preparing to take on the Dallas Cowboys this Monday night here on 97.3 ESPN, coverage begins at, what would that be, 7 p.m., I believe. Thank you, Mike Gill, giving me the thumbs up. I remembered that correctly. 7 p.m. Will that be the coverage right after game night here on 97.3 ESPN? Before we get to the Eagles stuff, I got to touch on some of this Doc Rivers, Ben Simmons stuff. Because the further we get along into this, as time has reached this point in the 24-hour period that we are at, it's become very obvious to me, at least, that the Sixers and Ben Simmons are currently at a stalemate. They're at a stalemate because of the reality that both sides are very specific in what they want, and neither side is being flexible at all. Now, you may deem that to be a positive or negative depending on who you ask, but that's the reality. The reality is that Ben Simmons doesn't want to be here. And I'm sure he's got a bunch of reasons why. All right? We all are aware that Ben Simmons doesn't want to be here. But the Sixers also have put their foot in the ground. And I'm going to be clear with you guys. The Sixers have every right to take the position that they have. There is no reality where the Sixers had to do whatever Ben Simmons wants. Listen, Doc Rivers said a lot of things that were, for lack of a better term, just kind of, talking points on the media platforms today. But the one thing he was very clear about is Ben Simmons is in the middle of a contract, a 4-year left on his deal. So if you have 4 years left on your contract that you signed, this isn't Anthony Davis, who's going to be a free agent soon, or Jimmy Butler, who is going to be a free agent soon. No, Ben is very far removed from free agency. So as a result, am I supposed to sit here and be like, oh yeah, Ben, whatever you want? No. If you can get something legitimate in return for Ben Simmons, you do it. Now, of course, the NBA news today got very interesting because two things happened in the same day that are going to impact Ben Simmons and the Sixers. Okay? There were two things that happened today that's going to affect the Ben Simmons market, shall we call it. All right? One of the things is what Warriors owner Joe Lacob said today. Now, Joe Lacob was fined $50,000 for violating the league's anti-tampering rules. That just came down about 20 minutes ago. The owner of the Warriors said when he was asked about the Ben Simmons stuff, he said, quote, in some ways that, referring to a trade for Simmons, doesn't really fit what we're doing. Simmons, as he calls him, he makes a lot of money. And can he finish games? I don't know. He's very talented. The problem is we have Draymond. Draymond and him are very similar in a sense that neither one really shoots and they do a lot of playmaking. That's the issue. The salary structure is another. So the Warriors owner clearly came out and basically said what a lot of people suspected, that the Warriors' interest in Ben Simmons was never fully there. Okay, that was a report that came out over a month ago, that there was more interest from the Sixers trying to trade Simmons to the Warriors than the Warriors' interest in bringing Simmons to them. Now, the owner got fined $50,000, which in the grand scheme of things, if you got the kind of money that Joe Lacob does, that's the equivalent of you out there listening to me here on 97.3 ESPN being fined about $20, maybe even $10, depending on what day of the week it is for Joe Lacob. So I don't think Lacob cares about the fine. I think Lacob was more interested in clearing the air. So the Warriors owner clearly came out and said, look, I don't think we can make the money work. And him and Ben Simmons are basically the same guy. Draymond Green and Ben Simmons. So any idea of the Warriors making a deal for Ben Simmons, I think, has been completely squashed by the owner, Joe Lacob. And he was fined $50,000 for it. Congratulations. That's like me getting fined, like, I don't know, $10 or maybe $20. I don't know. Joe Lacob's a billionaire. Okay. The dude's got so much money. $50,000 is not exactly the end of the world for that guy. But they made it very clear that Ben Simmons isn't going there. The other news that came out today that is very interesting is Gerson Rosas, the guy who was in charge of the Timberwolves front office, is out. He is done in Minnesota. That impacts the Ben Simmons situation because Minnesota has been the one team that has been rumbling and grumbling and making noise about potential Simmons interest all summer long. There has constantly been rumors about a potential Ben Simmons trade to Minnesota. And the problem is Minnesota can't offer the Sixers what they want in a deal like that. They are not going to offer you, first of all, if they offered you D'Angelo Russell, you don't want D'Angelo Russell. He's not making this team better. The only guy on that team that could be offered that would even make you raise an eyebrow if you're being a rational basketball fan is Anthony Edwards. And I don't know if the Timberwolves are really ready to trade him. Or are they? And here's the reason why I asked that question. Their owner, Glenn Taylor, came out and made his announcement about the releasing of Rosas. Remember, Rosas worked with Daryl Morey in Houston for, I think it was 13 years. Okay? They brought him into Minnesota because they wanted to bring what happened in Houston to Minnesota, right? That was the working theory. So Gerson Rosas was brought in to basically be a specific way. All right. Glenn Taylor, the owner, said this today, quote, Today, the Minnesota Timberwolves have parted ways with President of Basketball Operations, Gerson Rosas. As an organization, we remain committed to building a winning team that our fans and city can be proud of. Now, let me tell you something. That statement either means one of two things. Either Taylor is saying that he was pressing Rosas to make moves and deals, and Rosas was not willing to make the splashy move and deals that the owner wanted, or it's saying that Taylor and Rosas were already at an impasse before the offseason began, and whatever happened or didn't happen this offseason put them in a position where Taylor says, I can't work with this guy anymore. I'm starting to wonder, does the firing of Rosas, who was a Morey guy, who knew how Morey handled his business, who, let's be realistic, he knows how Morey can manipulate the market and manipulate conversations to make trades done. Does Taylor now hire someone in the interim to be the new president of basketball operations who is more gullible, who Morey can manipulate? Can the Sixers now pull a trade off with the Timberwolves that's going to get what the Sixers want in a potential 3-14 trade? Because Rosas, who is very aware of how Morey operates, now he's no longer there. Keep that in mind as we move forward, because I said it once and I'll say it twice. This Ben Simmons saga is only going to make progress when another team comes to the table with the Sixers with an offer. Not a serious offer, but an offer. And the reason I say that is because all the reports were this summer of the Sixers saying what they wanted for Ben Simmons. Now it's on another team to make a serious counter to the Sixers. I know it's not apples to apples, but if you ever watch the movie Moneyball, when he's making all those phone calls and he gets the Indians on the phone and he's trying to get David Justice and all these different guys and these moves and these trades, and some of the other teams are like, what is this guy doing? What does he want? That's kind of how Morey works. When Morey wants to make a trade or he's interested in making a deal, the other team is always asking what's going on here, because they want to know, does Morey know something that we don't? Does Morey know something that we should know? And now with Rosas, who knew Morey very well, no longer in Minnesota, does Morey tell Josh Harris, hey, Josh, why don't you call the Timberwolves owner, Glenn Taylor, and maybe find out what they want to do moving forward? Because now that Rosas isn't there, maybe that was a roadblock in getting a trade done. Something to think about on a Wednesday edition here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. With your messages a little bit later in the show. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. You could DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. You can download it for free from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Of course, if you would have downloaded the 97.3 ESPN mobile app already, you would have gotten the latest on the Doc Rivers quotes from the media junket that he ran over on the website 973ESPN.com and on the 973 ESPN mobile app, and the list of Eagles nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Those alerts and more you get with the 973 ESPN mobile app. And of course, you can listen to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig, and more through the 973 ESPN mobile app. And you can DM the show through the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. Coming up next, Dave Weinberg joins us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN FM. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
Dave Pash here, inviting you to join Mike Golick and me for Westwood One's coverage of Thursday Night Football from NRG Stadium in Houston. We kick off Week 3 of the NFL season with Mark Ingram and the Texans playing host to Sam Darnold and the Carolina Panthers. It's the NFC South against the AFC South. in primetime on Thursday Night Football.
Listen to Thursday Night Football on 97.3 ESPN. Coverage begins at 8 p.m.
prior sales. See dealer for details. At Bennett Chevrolet, your vehicle will never be worth more than it is this month. That's a fact. Bennett will pay you top dollar on the spot and will buy your vehicle even if you don't buy one of ours. No sales pressure, just top dollar for your trade. In fact, this month only, Bennett will pay you a minimum $8,000 for your trade. Let me repeat. Bennett will pay you a minimum $8,000 towards any pre-owned vehicle on our lot. No matter the condition or miles, even if your trade's a total wreck, it's worth $8,000 this month only. Imagine how much more we'll pay for a good quality trade-in. Get to Bennett Chevy and you could drive away in a newer vehicle with the same or even lower payments than you're making on your old vehicle. Plus, at Bennett, we have non-commissioned sales folks who are paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. So there's never any sales pressure and never any need to negotiate. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night, 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We'll get to your messages a little bit later in the hour. Of course, text board is open, 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. But joining us right now at 97.3 ESPN, you can see the show on YouTube and Twitter and join the conversation there. Dave Weinberg joins us for another edition of Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. I think the first question a lot of people have is, did Dave Weinberg watch the game on Sunday?
Dave Weinberg was at the game on Sunday, so yes, I did.
There you go. See, well, that's a definite different conversation then. So let me ask you.
Yeah, that's true.
Let me ask you that. Okay, so watching the game on television as I was, the perception was that was one of the loudest crowds I've heard for a regular season game in a while. And then after they didn't complete that wannabe Philly special, it seemed like the air was let out of the building. Is that how it felt in the building?
Absolutely. Yeah. The crowd was very loud and they were so happy to be back. And yeah, they were very excited. It was really loud. It was rowdy. It was football season again. And after they went for that ridiculous Philly not so special, if you want to call it. It was definitely all the momentum and all the excitement that they had built up. It just seemed to like it deflated the balloon, so to speak, and they never really recovered from it.
Dave, I wrote about this myself over at 97.3 ESPN.com. To me, the offense was Nick Sirianni overthinking the room. I think Sirianni went out of that game with a completely wrong game plan. He tried to reinvent the wheel. I mean, you break down the plays, you break down everything, all the numbers, you rewatch the game and you realize that wasn't the same offense you saw in week one. It was like he said, I'm going to try to show this team we can go deep, when you don't have to go deep that many times.
No, if you want to take some shots here and there, absolutely. You have, a lot of speed on the outside with Kez Watkins and Jalen Reagor, and he showed up on the 91-yard reception that Quez had in the game. But yeah, it's I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to accomplish. Just you have the fourth, you have first and goal on the one. Just sneak it 3 times, will you please, or 4? You don't have to throw the ball. You don't have to try anything fancy. You have a very good running quarterback. You got a tremendous offensive line. Use it. Don't try to be too tricky. Like you say, he did outthink himself on that occasion, I think, and actually throughout the game. I wasn't quite sure what he was trying to accomplish. I guess he just wanted to show everybody that he's a great offensive mind. So he wanted to, show some things that maybe people hadn't seen before, but it really wasn't necessary. If he had just stuck to the basics, I think they possibly would have came out with a win.
Now, Dave, you've covered the Eagles through many different iterations of coaches in this town.
Correct.
Sirianni, after the game, said the game was his fault. He has to do better. And at one point, you're like, hey, great, he admitted to something wrong. But on the other hand, it's like, didn't I hear that from Andy Reid and Doug Peterson?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what's the big surprise here? I heard everybody crediting giving credit to him for his admission, if you will. But yeah, it's what else is a coach supposed to say? They're certainly not going to blame the players. So what are they going to do? They're going to blame themselves. They're always going to put the blame on themselves for whatever goes wrong, whether it was their fault or not. In this case, it was his fault. So, good for him for owning up to it. But that really wasn't that big of a surprise. I mean, that's what a coach is supposed to do, really.
The one play I wanted to see on that goal line, Dave, that we didn't see, but we saw a variation of it later in the game, was when Jalen Hurts ran that option pitch with Miles Sanders. To me, you should have run that on the goal line, but behind Mailata. You should have said, Mailata, go plow, Kelsey, run to the edge, and we'll just run an option and hope for the best. To me, that's the play that should have been run on the goal line.
Yeah, you're possibly right there. I mean, I could see that play having some success. I mean, I personally, if you're down that close, just stick to the inside. Just try to overpower the guys. But and that play certainly would have accomplished that also. But yeah, when you're backed up a little bit, certainly you should be able to try. You should try that kind of a play. And you're right, Melato's having an outstanding season so far. Big, powerful, just rolling over people. And that's definitely a play that I think would have worked. You're right.
Dave Weinberg joining us here for a Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. At Dave Weinberg 19 on Twitter. Check out all of his extra points over at 97.3ESPN.com. Dave, the other side of the game to me on Sunday was the penalties. This team now has 22 penalties in 2 games. And for a coaching staff that preached fundamentals, basics, doing football the right way, I don't know if the players didn't hear them or not, or what's going on, because to me, when you have more penalties than the other team for 2 straight games, that's not fundamentals and basics.
It's kind of funny you mentioned that, because everybody's been talking all along about how Nick is a player's coach. Well, the danger of that is that they might not respect you or maybe fear you like someone with a little more aggressiveness, a little more authority. I've heard that he does yell at players on occasion, but if you're trying to be their buddy, they're not always going to respect what you have to say. And yeah, that's a glaring example of a lack of discipline on a team. And those things can really kill you over the course of a season if you continue to let it happen. I mean, especially that penalty on Derek Barnett. How many times do we have to see that before he gets benched or even something more drastic? But he's just that kind of player. It doesn't seem like anybody can get through to him. But most of all, Nick Sirianni, I guess. But yeah, it's if you're going to if you expect to make the playoffs, you expect to have a winning season, you have to be more disciplined than what they've been showing so far.
Yeah, I got to give credit to, it was Zach Berman who tweeted out that Barnett has been flagged for 8 personal fouls in his career, including 6 unnecessary roughness penalties and 2 roughing the quarterback. So, this is a trend, a visible trend with him. And by the way, Kayvon Wallace, that helmet hit, he did that in college too. So you have 2 guys who have a history of making those kind of plays, being that irresponsible. And to me, Dave, it's not just the coaches, it's the other players. Fletcher Cox, somebody else on the team's got to grab these guys and be like, dude, like, for example, and I'm not saying, this is 100% what happened, but if someone committed a stupid foul on the Andy Reid Eagles, right, on defense, Trotter or Dawkins are getting in their face, right? At some point in time, who's the guy on the Eagles right now who is getting in Barnett and Wallace's face, especially considering that the heart of this defense, Brandon Graham, is now done for the year?
Yeah, that's a major loss for them. Huge loss, actually, not just on the field, but in the locker room, because he would have been that guy to maybe call Derek to task a little bit for what he did. But now that he can't play, or he doesn't have the same influence. I mean, you can still be in the locker room, but you're just not going to be viewed in the same way if you're not out there on the field with him. And yeah, it's going to be incumbent upon guys like Fletcher Cox, like Darius Slay, I guess, who's an NFL veteran. Only been there a couple of years, but still, he has that cachet that comes with being one of the best players in the league at your position. Trying to think who else might be the guy defensively. That might be it. Because the rest of the defense is kind of either guys who are very young or guys who haven't been here that long. So like you mentioned, I think Fletcher Cox might be the guy that should probably step up and be more assertive. That's really not Fletcher's way. He's more of a he's a funny guy in the locker room, but he's kind of quiet. He's not really one of those rah kind of guys. But he's going to have to be a more of a veteran leader, like you said. And even it's not impossible for an offensive guy to do that too. I mean, like I mentioned earlier, in our conversations that Peterson had that veterans committee that 5-6 guys who would kind of govern things, and hopefully Nick has the same kind of thing with his team. But if he does, then it should be Lane Johnson or it should be Jason Kelsey or somebody like that can also kind of get their point across.
So, Dave, the gauntlet of the schedule is coming up here for the Eagles.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Monday Night Football in Dallas, then back home against Patrick Mahomes.
Loss.
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying the Mahomes. To me, the Mahomes game is 100% a loss. Yeah. Like, it's no offense to the Eagles, but Mahomes and the Chiefs are not losing to the Eagles. Then you travel to Carolina to play a Panthers team with a very good defense and a resurgent Sam Darnold. Then you come home against the defending Super Bowl champs on Thursday Night Football with Brady. Always seems like the guy has a chip on his shoulder for something. And then you got to travel to Vegas to play the Raiders, who are starting the season 2-0 as they won against two teams that are expected to make the postseason. So to me, this stretch of 5 games is going to either be really ugly or at least moderately competitive.
Yeah. Based on what I saw the first week, they'd be competitive. Based on what I saw last week, not so much. It's going to be really interesting to see how Nick gets the team to respond to what happened last Sunday. How to deal with adversity, how to bounce back from it. And you're right. The schedule certainly doesn't get any easier from here on out. And if they can, if they somehow wind up losing 3-4 in a row, then the season is in danger of spiraling out of control. So you're really going to have to put your foot down to try and turn things around. If they can somehow come out with a win, maybe 2 in the stretch, then I think they'll be okay the rest of the way. But if not, then they're in serious trouble.
Yeah, to me, the 2 games that I think are the most, for lack of a better term, winnable are the Panthers and the Raiders, just because I don't think either one of those teams are dominant forces of nature. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas, to me, I understand that you get the Bucks and the Chiefs at your house, but they're still the Bucks and the Chiefs. Like I can't get past who those quarterbacks and who those teams are at this point for the Eagles.
Yeah, you're not winning those 2 games. You're just not. Yeah, if they can, those are the 2. I mean, even Dallas too. I mean, Dallas is they look good the other night, beating the Chargers team that I kind of think might be going to up in the Super Bowl for the AFC at the end of the year. So to beat that team really says a lot about Dallas, but they do have some weaknesses also. So maybe you can find a way to win that game. But yeah, this is a really daunting stretch of the schedule, like you said, and they're really going to have to scratch and claw to get a win or 2 here.
Yeah, the weird thing with Dallas also is that they score a ton of points against Tampa in week 1. Then they score barely anything, and their defense helps them win the game in week 2 without Lawrence and without La'el Collins. So it's like I don't know what this Cowboys team is at this point. Are they the team that almost beat Tampa week 1? Or are they the team whose defense stepped up huge and beat the Chargers in week 2? I have no idea.
You can say the same thing about the Eagles, I guess, right? I mean, are they the team that embarrassed Atlanta in Atlanta, or are they the team that's that struggled the way they did on Sunday? So, yeah, I guess maybe that's the way for all those teams that are kind of like mediocre, especially in the NFC East. It doesn't look like there's any clear-cut team that's going to take charge of this. So maybe mediocre is going to be good enough, but I would think if you're Nick Sirianni and the fans, you want something more than that.
Dave Weinberg joining us for another edition of Weinberg Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg 19. Dave, the first list of nominees for the 2022 Pro Football Hall of Fame class came out today. And there were 15 notable former Eagle names on the list. Now, we know not all of them are going to make the Hall of Fame because obviously the first list is just kind of like the pool they're drawing from. But there are some interesting names on it. I want to run some of them by you because I think for fans out there, hearing some of these names, knowing that they're at least being considered for the Hall of Fame, some of them may interest them. Some of them may be like, wait, what? So let's go with the quarterbacks first.
Okay.
Two of the bigger names on the pool list, Randall Cunningham and Donovan McNabb. They're two of the names on the nominees list.
Boy, these are both tough. I would, Randall probably deserves consideration because he kind of revolutionized the position. He was that so-called ultimate weapon before the current generation of quarterbacks supposedly reinvented it. I mean, he was doing things that they were doing. That he was doing things 20 years ago that they're just not doing now. So, but I don't know that he had enough success to merit in a Hall of Fame selection. Donovan's really tough. I'm one of the guys who thinks Donovan is a Hall of Famer. I know there are a lot of people out there that don't think so, but the fact that he got to 4 or 5 NFC championship games, got to a Super Bowl, albeit they didn't win, but and his statistics are off the charts. I personally would think Donovan should be in there. Randall, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Randall, you could argue there is no Michael Vick, Lamar Jackson, any of those guys without him.
Correct.
And then Donovan, you could argue that if the Eagles didn't draft him second overall, there might not have been an Andy Reid era. You know what I mean? Because he was in many ways kind of the staple. Because many of those years that he was injured and didn't play, they had trouble getting up and going. So it's definitely an interesting argument for both of them. Over at the running back position, Brian Westbrook is one of the nominees.
No. Eagles Hall of Fame, absolutely. Maybe even jersey retired. I don't know. Undoubtedly one of the best Eagles in history. But when you think of him, when you think of like Hall of Fame, you think of guys who are probably the best at their position in their era. And I don't know that Brian fits that bill. He did a lot of things well, but I don't think he was great. And I think greatness determines whether you're in Canton or not.
By the way, two other running backs who are on the nominees list who are former Eagles are some famous or infamous names for the 90s, depending on who you ask. Herschel Walker and Ricky Waters.
Ricky Waters deserves serious consideration. A lot of people kind of get on him for his quirky personality. And, his first game as an Eagle wasn't the best with for what. But he did rush for 1,000 yards that season, and he pretty much carried that 95 team on his back by himself. And he had a pretty nice career for himself. He's probably going to fly under the radar a little bit, but I think he might be somebody that deserves consideration. Herschel Walker, I don't unless you. I guess you have to consider his USFL stuff, right? Because it's Pro Football Hall of Fame,
right? Pro
not
Football
just NFL. So, I guess if you take everything into consideration, maybe. Based on his NFL stuff, though, no, definitely not.
Now, on the defensive side of the ball, two nominees on the Pro Football Hall of Fame list that came out today, who were from the famous Eagles defenses from the late 80s, early 90s. Seth Joyner and Eric Allen are both on the nominees list.
Eric Allen, most definitely. He belongs in Canton. He probably should have been there already. He was an elite corner, the best in franchise history, really, I think. And he was one of the best in the league at his position when he played. Seth, that's a little bit of a tougher call, but if you look at his statistics, he probably is a Hall of Famer. I mean, I don't know if any other linebackers had like more interceptions and more sacks than him. And he was unquestioned a leader on that defense. The problem was that we had to share the spotlight with Reggie White and those kind of guys, and Jerome Brown, Wes Hopkins, Andre Waters. So maybe he didn't get all the attention he deserved. Eric Allen, most definitely. Seth Joyner, possibly.
By the way, Seth Joyner is second all time in Eagles franchise history in solo tackles.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little side note. So he was a tackling machine.
Oh yeah,
for all intents and purposes. Couple corners on the list. Oh, go ahead,
He's a pretty good analyst now too, I think. I mean, I hear him on the Eagles post-game show. He doesn't pull any punches, that's for sure.
No, he definitely doesn't. That is 100% true. Couple corners that you covered, Dave, made the list. Troy Vincent and Asante Samuel.
Yes and yes. Troy, he was unbelievable for the Eagles, I think, and for the Dolphins as well before that. he was the leader of that defense, and unbelievably productive, plus an unquestioned leader. I definitely think he belongs in there. Asante, just based on his interceptions, you think he has to be under consideration. I mean, he wasn't the best tackler, and he definitely an odd person, but just for he was a ball hawk. He took the ball away from you, and when you needed it, so yeah, he definitely has to earn some consideration there, I think.
And then a couple of special teamers on the nominees list. We know the Hall of Fame doesn't have a lot of special teams guys, but among the former Eagles, we'll just get you a quick hit on each one of these guys. The kicker, Gary Anderson.
No, go ahead.
The punter, Sean Landetta.
Wow. He played forever. I mean, and USFL, NFL. He probably played for every team there was. But I would probably say no.
Kick returner, punt returner, Brian Mitchell.
That's another tough one because he had some pretty good years with Washington as well before he came over to the Eagles. But I would probably say no.
And then the one that made me chuckle. So I'm glad you're sitting down, Dave.
T.O. Oh, no.
T.O.'s already in.
That's right. Yeah, go ahead.
Kick return, punt returner, Allen Rossum.
What? Well, the fact he went to Notre Dame maybe deserves some recognition, but no, I don't even know why he's on that list.
I have no idea either, but I had to write it down because I'm like, I can't believe he's on the list of nominees.
Wow. I guess if you play a certain amount of years, I guess you automatically have to be on it. I don't know.
Well, he had a certain number of kick and punt return touchdowns, but most of those were with other teams. They weren't with the Eagles.
Yeah, Falcons probably, right?
Yeah, so but those are the main names that made the list. The full list we have over at 97.3 ESPN.
Okay, I'll check it out.
.com, and people can also remember that we already have one Eagle guaranteed for next year's Pro Football Hall of Fame because Dick Vermeil did make the senior finalist, so at least he will be in the 2022 class. The full list, like I said, Allen Rossum is not the only funny name on the list, so folks can check out the other funny name over at 97.3 ESPN.com. He's Dave Weinberg. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg 19. Check out all of his work for us. Extra point columns at 97.3 ESPN.com. He joins us each and every Wednesday for Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave, always appreciate the time and the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Josh. And I promise I'll have a podcast coming up on Friday.
Oh, well, there you go. Tequila and touchdowns with Dave Weinberg. There you go. Dave, talk to you soon.
All righty. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. And, of course, Game Night being brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. They want to get you the most out of every play. That's why they're giving everyone a $10 risk-free bet each week. Thursday night's matchup between the Panthers and Texans is a great opportunity to place a same-game parlay with 3 legs or more. And if your bet doesn't win, FanDuel will pay you back up to $10. There's no feeling like nailing a same-game parlay bet. So lock in your bet today on FanDuel Sportsbook and get up to $10 back if your bet doesn't win. If you're new to FanDuel Sportsbook, you can also claim a 30-1 odds on either the Eagles or Cowboys to win on Monday night. Just sign up with promo code Hennig, and if your first bet loses, you get up to $1,000 back in site credit. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, playing present in New Jersey. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available in multiple sports in all states on mobile or web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. We'll check out your guys' messages next on the other side. Text board 609-403-0973. And of course, you can message us direct through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's week 3 of the 2021 season. This Monday night in Big D as the Eagles face the Dallas Cowboys.
We circle this date the second the schedule comes out. There's nothing normal about playing against the Dallas Cowboys.
Pre-game coverage begins at 7. Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 8. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
wants you to get the most out of every play. That's why they're giving everyone a $10 risk-free bet each week. There's no feeling like nailing a same-game parlay bet. So lock in your bet today on FanDuel Sportsbook and get up to $10 back if your bet doesn't win. New to FanDuel Sportsbook, new customers can also claim a 31 odds bet on either team to win in the Monday night game between Philadelphia and Dallas. Just sign up with promo code Hennig, and if your first bet loses, you get up to $1,000 back in site credit. That's promo code Hennig on FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play and present in New Jersey. Refund issued, non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay. Available for multiple sports in all states on mobile or web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig wrapping up the show back here in the Matt Fleck Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea City. Download the 97.3 ESPN mobile app for free from the Apple App Store or Google Play. Get you a couple messages before we get out of here on the show. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks, Dave Weinberg, for joining the show today here on 97.3 ESPN. Dan and EHT chimes in and says, I think the Cowboys are going to see things offensively and defensively they are not expecting. Sirianni understands the importance of this game. Believe me, it was a vanilla game plan, and Sirianni was saving things for Dallas. The Eagles have a better offensive defensive line in this matchup. Let's go. And then he leaves with the Eagles emoji at the end of the message. It's from Dan and EHT. Dan, listen, you may be saving things for Dallas, but you still could have ran a similar game plan to what you ran in Atlanta, right? You still could have ran the game plan that put Hurts in a position to get the ball out of his hand faster, that forced the Falcons on their heels because they didn't know what was coming. And you could have ran those plays in that game. You didn't have to run a vanilla or a deep ball program. You didn't have to run any of those things. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And Danny, that's my problem. And listen, I don't doubt that Sirianni understands the importance of the Cowboys game. I don't doubt there's a possibility that Sirianni has a bunch of tricks up his sleeve, him and Gannon, but I don't think you should sacrifice the 49ers game for the Cowboys game. I think that's a little ridiculous. Again, check out the full list of former Eagles who have been put on the list of nominees for the 2022 Pro Football Hall of Fame class over at 973ESPN.com. Also, the transcribed quotes from all of Doc Rivers' appearances on ESPN National Radio this morning on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max right here on 97.3 ESPN. All that information and more right now at 973ESPN.com and the 973 ESPN mobile app. I'm Josh Hennig. I'll be back tomorrow for getting you ready for NFL Week 3 with Amy McNamara from Sportsnet. So be tuned for that. Mike Gill will be at Chickies and Pete's tomorrow for the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Wake up with Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Weekday mornings at 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Can Ben Simmons play for you and win a championship?
All day, all day. He just does so many things, man. You know, it's funny. You guys heard me all year fighting for the kid, and he just does so many things.
Keyshawn, J. Will, and Max. Listen weekday mornings at 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.